a very long journey making it. It started many years ago. A colleague of mine had this idea of this grandfather traveling to the Ukraine to find this lost love with the granddaughter. She'd been researching for the BBC about war stories and Germany army soldiers and officers who'd fought in the war. And then we took that idea over a number of years and developed it with breaks, and then in the last 5 years I developed the project on my own, and we financed it, but the financing took a long time to get together, as it often does, unfortunately. And then when we were kind of ready to go in 2014, then the war in Ukraine broke out, and that changed the whole story. You've got the story in the present, you've got the story of the war, which we don't tell in flashbacks. That was a deliberate decision. And then the challenge there is not to have just a flood of information and dialogue telling what happened before. You know, if you can't, it's difficult to tell the information visually. So that was a challenge, trying to make that past live, but without using flashbacks. And then you have the level of the Ukraine and the conflict. I think the main challenge there was to find what is the connection between the main story, between the grandfather and his daughter and the granddaughter, this family story, about his past and the impact it has on their present, to find the connection between that and what was going on in the Ukraine. It's always interesting when you go abroad with a film, because, you know, the film has got subtitles, and then, you know, so there's that little break in the connection you can make. But above all, you're in a different culture, and it was just it was very interesting. Yesterday at the question and answer session, there was the audience was an older audience, very similar to the audience in Germany. And it was interesting because a lot of the questions people asked, the things that they said, it was like in Germany. Yeah, they said, yeah, my father or my grandfather, he was in the war, he never spoke about it. We never dealt with these issues. It's still a trauma. You know, it's very universal, that story of, you know, of a family where you have the older generation who went through hell and didn't know how to work it out. Today we'd all go, you know, as soon as something's, you know, you have a headache, you go to your therapist, you know, you try and work it out. But in those days, they went through hell and they never talked to anybody about it. And you know, this having an impact generation after generation is what the story is about. And it was great to see that actually the audience here seemed to affect them in the same way. They got that part of the story, and that's what interested them. So it was fantastic.